I am Paging Dr. Chanda.
I am the Dr. Chanda.
And I'm a licensed clinical psychologist.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Paging Dr. Chanda podcast, all things related to the Black culture.
Put the doctor in front of your name.
Hello, everyone. You are now listening to the Dr. Chanda Show, now on Fox Soul. And also you can listen to the audio on Revolt Podcast Network. I am here with a legendary journalist today. We have Mr. Toure here, and we are going to be talking about the psychology of storytelling. So behind the journalist, behind the music industry vet, we are going to get into the psychology of it all. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being on.
Thanks so much for having me. TikTok brings people together.
Yes, that's one of the beautiful things about social media, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, so I'm so appreciative of your time. I know we don't have much together, but I do want us to hop into things. I was telling my sister before we started, so it's rare that I'm ever nervous on my show because this is like my show, but you're a legend. And so
You're so nice.
Yeah, and you're an actual journalist. So I'm an artist and I'm sensitive about my stuff. So just don't be too hard on me because I'm not a real journalist.
It's all good.
Awesome. So can you tell us a bit about what had you starting in journalism?
What had me starting? I mean, I think there was a sense of I need to use my life to help Black people in some way. I felt very tangibly the people whose shoulders I was standing on, the people who had fought, agitated, died, all those sort of things, for me to be able to have the opportunity to go to a good school, you know, to get into a career I wanted to get into, not have to deal with overt segregation and these sort of things. So I had to do something. I remember being in college and thinking, wow, it would be really cool to be in the CIA, but I don't think that that would have an impact on Black people. Now, in retrospect, that could have a tremendous impact on Black people. But at the time I was saying, I don't think that I can have an impact on Black people doing that. I want something that can do that. And I fell into media and journalism as a way to help talk about what's going on with Black people in a way that would help Black people.
And it certainly is helping us all. It certainly, I would say, paved the way for a lot of journalists that we see today. And you mentioned how the journalism that you do, it's because you're standing on the shoulders of like some of the previous giants. Who were some of the past writers and giants that you looked up to in terms of journalism?
Well, you know, so many people, when I came to New York, Greg Tate was already a legend. You know, I was able to become friends with him and talk to him about writing a lot. Nelson George, I talked to a lot about writing. You know, you remember reading James Baldwin and Ralph Ellison and, you know, Joan Didion and Vladimir Nabokov and Salman Rushdie and Susan Sontag and other people, Alice Walker and Zora Neale Hurston, and my God, Toni Morrison was like a god in my mind, and it's just like everything that Toni chooses to do is the right thing. So just try to follow what Toni does. And like I would read the sentences with a microscope to say, okay, so she did this in this sentence. This is right. So how do you be more like that when you write a sentence? I mean, she is the ultimate for me.
Yeah, I think we all definitely look up to Miss Toni Morrison because of the profound work that she's doing. And regarding like your background, you've interviewed some amazing people from Kanye, Jay-Z. I talked a little bit about while we were on the phone how I'm a huge fan of your podcast and the stories that you tell. Of course, the stories that you tell related to some of these people that you were able to interview, from the princes to like, you know, even the people that you have now. Who would you say are some of your favorite interviews that you facilitated with?
I mean, it's hard to choose. It's hard to choose a couple. I mean, you know, I had a fairly extraordinary conversation, I think, with Zadie Smith on my podcast once. She's a genius. You know, I remember talking to Toni Braxton about singing again on my podcast, and just to talk to her about singing and like about the day you recorded Unbreak My Heart, which is one of the greatest records of the last, you know, couple of decades. Yes. She's like, well, we sang it once and then we sang it one more time. just for thing. But we had it the first. You sang it straight through, like, yes, straight through one time. That's what I mean, those sort of moments you live for. So many people, I mean, talking to Andre 3000 about his record, his jazz record, but there's so many great fun ones.
I was listening to the episode you had with Prince. So you were talking about your experience playing basketball with Prince. Can you like bring that to life for us for a bit, like to the viewers who may not have been able to hear that story?
I mean, this was the later period of Prince's recording career. So he was then going by a symbol, right, which was unpronounceable. So media would call him the artist formerly known as Prince, right? But the symbol there was no way to pronounce the symbol. So it was meant to throw all of us off, right? And like, how do we refer to him? People would say, well, if you're in the room and you need to get his attention, but like, I'm in the room with him. You never need to get his attention. He's always the center of attention. I interviewed him. It was frankly not a very good interview. I had a cover story. It takes a lot of talking to get a really good cover story. And so I said, can I email him some more questions? I emailed him 10. He answered 7 of them. So he chose the ones that he wanted to answer. The 10th question was, will you play basketball with me? And he wrote back, anytime, brother, right? Like with an A, not an E. And I was like, oh my God. And I also took that seriously. And I'm like, well, you said anytime. So when my photographer went to Paisley Park to shoot him for the cover, I showed up with the photographer with a basketball, like, what's up? You said anytime. Here I am. Let's go. I wasn't really thinking that anything was going to happen. It was just sort of like, let me just knock on the door and see what happens. And eventually he said, get the box of sneakers. And I was like, oh, no. And then he was in a black scoop neck top that, like, your girlfriend might wear, and black bell-bottom pants, same, and, white and red Nike Air Force One high tops. And we're playing ball, playing one-on-one. And then we got into 2-on-2, and playing one-on-one with him, the mask comes off. And I can see really like who he is as a person. And he's boyish, he's competitive, he's aggressive, he's filled with self-confidence, and I could see all those things. And it's exciting, sort of like compete. And he was like, I am trying to defeat you, right? Like he
was serious.
He was serious. It wasn't a play game. It was like, I'm going to destroy you. And we played one-on-one for like 10, 15 minutes. And then we played 2-on-2, which was Prince and me against his keyboardist, Morris, and my photographer, and Morris Hayes. And my God, it was so exciting to play with him. And he's a very good basketball player. The form on the shot and the way he moved, he looked like a Steph Curry. I'm not saying he's knocking down shots like that. And Desmond said the same thing, that the form, the way. So if you want to imagine what did Prince look like as a ball player, the shot looked like the way that Steph Curry shoots. So he looked like he had training. He looked like he knew what he was doing. He's moving without the ball. He's dribbling the right way and through the legs and all these sort of things. So he's a ball player. He played in high school. He was serious. He played throughout his life, so he was serious about it. He would play on tour. So we're playing 2-on-2. I grew up in the 80s watching Magic Johnson. So whenever I was a point guard, it was always with the no-look passes, right? That's the thing. So Prince makes a move down near the basket. He's open, more open than he even realizes. No-look pass right over to him. He does not realize the ball is coming. Now it's moving toward his nose. And I'm thinking, in milliseconds, oh my God, I'm going to break his nose or something. Oh my God, I need to tell him that the ball is coming. Oh my God. And I yell out, Prince. But then it's like, oh my God, you're not supposed to call him Prince. I'm going to get kicked out. So it's more like, so all this is happening. The ball misses his nose, flies out of bounds. He goes and gets it. And he's walking back holding it and pointing at me and giggling. And I'm like, what's so funny? And he goes, you didn't know what to call me. And he loved that confusion. right? Because it was the symbol era, right? So like, what am I supposed to call you? But he like really is like, I really don't care. That's the mess with the record labels. You call me Prince, you call me Purple Rain, you call me whatever. It's all good. So that so it's just this extraordinary moment where you got behind the mask to see like who you really are, and that's what you live for as a storyteller, to find out who your subject really, really is.
It's amazing because even listening to this story, I'm over here imagining like the Prince with these bell bottoms on playing basketball with you. And even with you telling this story, like you do an amazing job humanizing these individuals that the industry has dehumanized in some ways. And I think that's such a gift to be able to do.
Well, from the beginning of my career, I always wanted to be Black centric. And I think Black creators have to be really thoughtful about where am I being white centric in my work, down to the words you choose and the perspectives you choose. Once somebody handed me a line they wanted me to read that talked about when Cassius Clay became Muhammad Ali, that was very controversial. And I was like, hello, I remember my father and his brothers talking about that. It was not controversial to Black people. Black people were like, go ahead, like, do you, like, white people was controversial for. So, so I'm like, I'm not saying that, right? Because my work has to be Black centric. So, just thinking about how do I center Black people and talk about us in a human way. I also remember early on reading the other white people's work in terms of writing and uncovering people like Snoop Dogg or whatever. And there was a otherization that would happen. And this sense of like, this person, Snoop or whoever, is an alien. And let me explain how alien their world is. And I'm like, that's not alien. Like, that's like, that's part of my world. That's part of my cousin's world. That's part of my uncle's world. Like, what are you talking about? So I would be able to meet Snoop, Q-Tip, whoever, my early people. I'm like, we're peers. And I see you as a peer, and I write about you as a peer and not about some weird other from the land of poverty and the projects. It's like, oh my God, look how they tie their shoes. And like, oh my God, like these are human beings who got a chance, based on talent. Let's talk about that. So I was always sort of focused on how can I tell the story in a Black-centric way that does not look at my brothers, my sisters as aliens, because we're not. That doesn't participate in the otherization that white media sometimes puts on Black people.
For sure. And I wonder, and you kind of alluded to this already, but I wonder, like, what a part of your Black identity, like, how has that influenced how you tell stories, how you ask questions?
Wow, how my Black identity affects how I mean, I think that when we're having an interview, we can have a conversation. And I want it to feel like a conversation. And sometimes you just make a statement. Your new album is fantastic, right? It's great, whatever. You're a great singer. And the person will take that where they want to go with it. Well, my mother was a great singer in the house, and I mimicked her little, and that helped me grow, right? And I would have never known to ask about your mother's relationship to your singing, but I just made a statement and let you go somewhere with it. Now, you can't do that every single time, but I think sometimes an interviewer can just make a statement and let the subject respond to it and see where they take it, rather than tagging it with a question, which narrows where they can go with it. But look, I genuinely think that I am one of the best interviewers in media today, but the best interviewer living is Oprah. So if you want to know how to do an interview, watch Oprah, talking to, Harry and Meghan or whoever, the old Oprah, the new Oprah. She is an extraordinary interviewer. And quite often she asks very short questions. What do you mean? Can be a fantastic question. I think sometimes nervous interviewers, I'm not saying you, will ask 3, 4, 5 sentence questions. Which is not necessary.
Right.
right? Like get the ball back to the other person, right?
Right.
Like ask a short, intuitive question. Even Oprah's big on like, how did that make you feel? And like that can be such a brilliant question.
Yes. Yeah. I notice how like oftentimes when people ask me, you're a psychologist, how did you get into this industry? A lot of people don't realize like when journalists are asking questions, y'all sound like therapists a lot of the times. Like the way you formulate questions and keeping it very
How did that
concise.
make you feel?
Right, exactly, exactly. Tell me more about that, right?
Yes.
What was
Who
going
hurt
through
you?
your mind?
Who hurt you?
Right. Exactly.
Oh my God. I mean, I have a list in my mind. It's gotten a little fuzzy over time of, the people I made cry. And I'm not trying to make you cry.
Yeah.
But sometimes you want to cry. Sometimes just being silent and letting the moment linger will make you cry. I remember we can't call him a 9/11 survivor, but this was a firefighter who was supposed to be at the Trade Center on 9/11. He had something else that he had to do for his family. So his friend took his shift and he died. Now, he came on my show when I was on MSNBC, and there was a moment where I asked him something about like, basically, how bad do you feel about all this? Knowing obviously he's going to say, I feel horrible. And like, you probably want to let people know how bad you feel because that is part of your grieving process. And you don't want people to think like you're okay. Like, I feel horrible. I take care of this man's family. I feel tremendous guilt. Like, but like, how bad do you feel? And he was talking and kind of trying to hold it together, but you could see that, he was kind of losing it. Wow. And he took a pause. And that is the moment where most people in social situations would save you from yourself, would interrupt, change the mood, and get you. But I'm doing journalism. I'm doing media. And I had co-hosts who wanted to jump in because the impulse is to save him from crying on television. And I'm like, don't do anything. Everybody stay still. Right. And I didn't say anything. And that tipped him over into crying. And like, he did not embarrass himself, but he wanted to cry and to have this public mea culpa and to show people. And it was a really beautiful, poignant moment. And the person who survives basically 9/11 should be allowed to cry on television. I mean, like that is but like there's moments when you can like show me how you feel. And then as the interviewer, get out of the way, because the feelings it took me a very long time to realize this. The feelings are not immediate. The feelings take time to come up. Something happens. Yeah. It could take 90 seconds for the feeling to really come up and like, put itself on you to where you can name it and you have to feel it. So like, you got to give people time sometimes and not just keep moving through, but like watch them and how are they responding to things that you're saying.
And I think that's a perfect segue into like we're talking about the psychology of journalism, Black journalism specifically. I want to know more about like the emotional experience even for you, like in moments like that and creating safe spaces for people to tell their stories. I wonder like, the types of emotions that you experience when doing that.
I mean, you think about the emotional honesty of it. You think about giving them a space to be honest. Yeah. I think sometimes among Black people, we want to, have a stiff upper lip and nothing bothers me. And like, right. Everything rolls on my back. And I think in the last 10 years, we see more Black people saying, hey, I go to therapy and it's cool. Like, hey, like I am trying to be emotionally intelligent and like that is cool and valuable. And like giving people the space to normalize crying on television, but a lot of times it's about when I see myself in your shoes, right? Yes. Like I think it's important. Don't look at these stars as stars. They can't deconstruct their image for you, but like they are a person who goes to a studio, maybe, right? Makes movie, television show, music, And then that goes out in the world. That's their work. It's all work. But what would you do if you were in their place? A long time ago, Remy Ma was put on trial for shooting somebody in the stomach, somebody who she said had stolen many thousands of dollars out of her purse, right, at night.
Wow.
So, I'm like, are you afraid to go to prison for this? And she's like, no, no, I grew up in the system. I ain't scared of no prison. Okay, you're tough. Now, I had recently had a child, and she had a young boy. And, my child was not even a year old, but I'm like, to not see a day of their life would be like insane to me. And now I'm like, oh, you're a parent, and you might go to prison, and you might not be able to see your child. Like, and I'm thinking, well, you would be sad to miss your child, right? Because I'm like, that's just a human connection. I'm not talking to a star.
Exactly.
Parent to parent.
Right.
And I remember she was like, you ain't gonna have me crying up here on BET. And I didn't say anything for maybe 10, 15 seconds and like let it set in. And we're not moving on from this until you give me a real honest reaction. And then she let out a tear, and she's like, okay, yeah, that would be terrible. And like, you're just being real. Just be real. Let's just be real with each other. Don't pretend. Don't bother me. It's going to be fine for me. It's going to be fine for him. Like, no, there's going to be some emotional work for you to do to get through this situation. And that's fine. And normalize that, because we are filled with trauma, right? Past trauma, like trauma that we've acquired through our own lives, our friends and family's lives. We need to be able to talk about this, right? And not suffer in silence.
And I think that's a part of the work that you're doing. You're allowing people to be able to openly share their experiences without feeling the need to inhibit and to suffer in silence, which is something that we've normalized in our community, unfortunately. I know we're approaching time, but I do have a really quick question that I want. Well, it might not be quick. Let me know.
Let's try it.
Okay. All right. So this infamous interview with R. Kelly, right?
Yeah.
There was a lot of different, a lot of people, still talk about that interview today. I even remember seeing a parody of it on the Boondocks. Like, that's just how relevant it was.
A parody of it on the Boondocks?
Yeah. So they asked them the question that you asked.
On the Boondocks?
About yeah.
I don't think I saw that.
Really?
Really? I saw.
Okay, maybe it could have been a different cartoon.
Sorry, talk about it. I mean, I've seen other things, but I don't think I saw the Boondocks one.
It could have been a different cartoon, but I know somebody did a parody of it. So I'll have to fact check.
Please, well, send it to me if you see it, because I want to see it for sure.
I got you. I wonder. So in our community, we have a tendency to protect individuals who are like high profile, right? And sometimes to our own detriment. I wonder, with that experience and you kind of exposing this exploitation happening in the music industry, was there any backlash that you experienced and any like emotions that you experienced as a result from that?
No, I mean, I didn't, look, that was the first truly viral, and we didn't use that word at that time, moment of my career, of my life. Like, after that aired, I could not walk down the street without somebody saying, oh my God, you're facing the R. Kelly. I mean, it was like every single block, somebody was like, yo, you're facing the R. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Nobody ever said to me, you should not have done that.
Okay.
I think people deeply understood R. Kelly's kind of a monster, and somehow he's getting away with it. Mm-hmm. And, it is what it is. But, that guy right there just exposed him. I mean, it was a crazy moment because, I asked him, we were talking about underage girls, and I was trying to get him to respond to that notion. And he kept and he would receive the question and be like, 14, 13, that's disgusting. What are you talking about? And I'm like, yeah, what we're talking about is 15, 16, but you keep using underage to like be like, no, what are you talking about? Right? I don't like underage 14-year-olds. So the big moment there was like, okay, let's have it out. Do you like underage girls? Now, and then his crisis manager came running in from the side and said, no, you can't ask him that. And he said, no, I want to answer this. So then the guy sits down. But I'm thinking he keeps messing with me on the notion of underage girls. So how can I be more specific, right, and I realize in the milliseconds that we're going, I'm really like, teenage is more specific. We cannot debate on what the meaning of teenage is, right? He was debating on the meaning of underage because it is not as specific as teenage, right? So if you watch really closely, I start to say underage, and at the last second, I think like the U starts to come out, and then I'm like, teenage girls. And that's where he's like, and that was a softball in my mind.
Yeah.
I'm like, so the follow-up's going to be a little bit harder, and then we go follow-up from there, and then I'm going to have to let it go, right? Otherwise, you're going to walk out on me. So I was just ramping up with like a nice, easy softball. Do you like teenage girls? Well, how old are we talking? Like, what?
That's really a cut and dry type of.
It's so simple. And the face that I made was like, you failed the basic softball.
Yes.
But let me not make a face that's like, so that everybody in the room knows you just messed up. But, some of our friends on TikTok are pointing out that, 10, 20, 30 years ago, it was not uncommon to hear male singers put in a song. Yeah, she was 17. Yeah, backstage, underage. Yeah, she looked like KRS-One had a song about, I thought she was 21, or something. I thought she was 18, which is also young, but it turns out she was 13. Like, I didn't know. Like, there's this. This is a not uncommon theme. That from a previous generation.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
That's wild. That's very wild. Now I have to go back and listen to some of these things. But that's even more of a reason why the work that you're doing is so imperative, because not only are you helping to expose some of these things, but also, like we said, humanize people. Like, people are flawed, and bringing these things out. I do appreciate your time today. Thank you so much for dropping by.
Thank you so much for having me. You're one of my favorite creators. So
I appreciate that. Thank you. And you're one of my favorite journalists. And we're going to vote for Toure for the NAACP Image Awards. So make sure. Yes, of course. Can you let the viewers know how to vote?
Yeah, on the NAACP Image Awards site, you can vote. My podcast, Being Black, the 80s, talks about Black political issues from the 80s through the lens of songs from the 80s, like Fast Car and Fight the Power and Straight Outta Compton. And so it's an extraordinary look at what it was to be Black in the 80s. And we're coming back with Being Black in the 70s in a couple of months.
Wow. Awesome. Well, congratulations again. I appreciate your time. Listen, soulmates, you guys can catch this show every Thursday at 9 p.m. You can also catch the audio version on Revolt Podcast Network every Wednesday. And don't forget, you have the power to create the emotions that you want to experience. God bless.